This video is going to show you how to make croissants. So we're working on our yeast breads this week, and croissants are going to be our straight mix method, which means that we just dump everything in and we don't activate our yeast first. So they're actually pretty simple in this first step, so on your first day. And then there are some slightly more complicated steps, but really they just take some time. And once you see the pictures of how to do it, I think it should be pretty easy for you. So here we go. I made the croissant dough, the straight mix method, and you really don't need it very much. So it doesn't take much at all. You'd rather under knead it than over knead it, but your recipe just calls for you to knead it for 3 minutes. There's a few of the mixers that seems like there's just not quite enough dough for the dough hook to reach, and I'm not sure why since they're all the same mixer. But if that's happening to you, just knead it on a floured countertop and it'll give you the same result. And you want it to be very soft, you want it to be tacky but not sticky, and it's not going to be like when you hold it up and it completely stays together. So just follow those directions in your recipe that say knead it for about 3 minutes, and then I cut the butter into small pieces. I knead it until the butter is incorporated, the dough is clearing the sides, or in your hand it's tacky but not sticky, and then a little bit of extra flour if I need to, and then wrap it in plastic wrap and refrigerate. But if you have the small 2-quart containers, you can spray it and then put it down in your small 2-quart container and stick the lid on it and then label it. Okay, so then I let that rise at room temperature for a bit before I put it into the refrigerator to retard the process, but it does work best if I let it rise at room temperature first. So you can see there how much I have, and then it's risen there. That was about an hour, and then I stuck it in the refrigerator. Okay, so then the next day for you, because you'll make your dough on the first day, so the next day it'll be pulled out of the refrigerator, and you don't have to wait a long time like you would for some doughs. It can go almost straight from the refrigerator to your flour board. So flour board dough, and then I am going to roll that out. Oh, and on the first day I also made my butter square. So you just put that between 2 pieces of parchment, and it tells you in your directions that you have the piece of parchment on top, rolling pin, 7x7, trim the edges, and keep putting that together. Okay, so then at this point I've got my 7x7 butter square, I've got my 11x11 dough. So I went ahead and made my 11x11 dough. I'm going to pull those edges out just a little bit further. And then I take my butter square that was wrapped in parchment. You don't need to transfer it to plastic wrap. You can just leave it wrapped in parchment and in the fridge. So I take my butter square, I peeled off one side, and I'm going to stick it on kind of like a temporary tattoo. So I'm going to put the butter on, and then I am going to peel off this top layer. And then this down here kind of broke apart, so I just put it back on there and it'll be fine. So you can see that I've got my 11x11 square, and then my 7x7 butter square is diagonal on it. So then I'm going to take these edges and I'm going to pull them over kind of like I'm wrapping a present, a great present of butter. So I've done that at that point. I've taken the edges and I pulled them to the center, and then I am going to just leave it right there, and I'm going to kind of tap with my rolling pin a little bit, and the butter will soften up just enough, and you want to roll it out. And you can kind of see the stripes of butter in there still, which is totally okay. This is the laminating. So if we think about a laminator, like at school, a piece of laminated paper means that we have plastic stuck around the outside of the paper. So in this case, we're going to have dough stuck around the outside of the butter. So it's laminated dough. We're really laminating the butter with the dough, and then this butter is going to be distributed all throughout, and that butter is going to be what gives us our flaky layers. It's going to create a little bit of steam, so it'll puff up and give us those layers and flavor all the way throughout. So our butter will give us those flaky layers. And then I just took that long skinny piece, so it was 8x20, and you want to be pretty close to 8x20, and I folded it like a business letter. So I've got fold to the center, fold to the center. Then I take that and I fold it in half on itself, and I wrap it in plastic wrap. This is the day you're going to have to be moving pretty quickly, because you need to get this first fold done, and then into the fridge for 20 minutes. Then you do it again, and into the fridge for 20 minutes, and then you do it again, and then it goes into the fridge until the next day. If your group is a little behind that day, then you might need to stick it in the freezer for about 10 minutes. If it's just sticking while you're trying to roll it out, it means it's not cold enough. So you really need to get going quickly. So your folds are going to happen first before you work with any of your other dough, or one person does that while other people are working with the other doughs you're working on this week. So you want to make sure you get that fold done back in the fridge, just in that same plastic wrap every time. You don't have to keep getting new plastic wrap each time you put it in the fridge. Okay, so then this is going into the fridge for a second fold, and then I'm going to do my second fold, back into the fridge, do my third fold, and on my third fold, here we are. This is another time. My third fold, I like to wrap it a little more loosely because now I'm going to put it in the fridge overnight, so it's going to rise a little bit. So this, once I've had it in the fridge overnight, actually expanded and filled up all of that. So you want to leave a little bit of space in your plastic wrap. So just remember that when you're peeling out your plastic wrap for the first time, that you don't need it wrapped tightly. And then I am going to roll it out. So when I roll it out, I'm going to get a 20 by 20 square. I think this dough is actually pretty easy to work with to roll it out. I'm going to get a 20 by 20 square, and then as your ingredients, or as your recipe tells you, it's 20. So you're going to make cuts every 5 inches. So this is 5 inches, 10 inches, 15 inches for 3 cuts total horizontally. And then I'm going to take one cut all just straight down the middle. So I measured it and I did it at 10 inches. And then I'm going to make cuts this way with my pizza wheel, my pastry wheel. And I just like to go straight all the way from there to there. For me, works the best to make a straight line. But you just want them from corner to corner, of course, corner to corner. And this edge wasn't quite straight, but that's okay. So this is what you're going to get when you roll it. And then you're going to take these, and from this edge, you're going to roll it up from the big end. And this notch is there, and I just made the notch with the pizza wheel. This notch is there because that's what helps me form the horn. So I'm going to roll it from this end to that end. So just like you would see a croissant or a crescent roll, same idea. I'm going to roll it from this end to that end. So I want to have this little notch there to help me form that horn shape. So I roll it up, and then I like to tuck in this front end. You want to tuck that in, otherwise sometimes it'll kind of fly up in your oven. So this guy needs tucked in before I bake it. So just tuck in that front end, and you kind of take the edges and curl them towards you. And then at this point, you guys are going to stick them back in the refrigerator after you let them proof for a little bit. Let them sit out just covered for about 30 minutes, and then you're going to stick them back in the fridge to be baked tomorrow or the next day. And then when you pull them out of the refrigerator, you want them to proof. So someone will do that before school for you so that they're ready for you. So you want them to proof, and then you'll use an egg wash, which is egg beaten with water. You'll use a pastry brush to just brush it over the top. That gives it that nice shine and a little bit of texture to the outside of the croissant. And then after they're proofed, you can get them in the oven with the egg wash, of course, 400-degree oven. And then if you have 2 pans, which you should, then you're going to have one in the middle top rack, one in the middle bottom rack, and then you're going to switch them halfway through. And you'll have these beautiful flaky croissants in the end, as long as you laminated your dough right, which I think you will. So that is your almost final product. They're ready to be egg washed and baked. And then your final product, of course, will look like a croissant. So if you follow these directions, you will get a flaky, buttery croissant. And you could put a square of chocolate, a stick of chocolate on the inside. People will do savory croissants. The problem is if you mix a lot of stuff in there, it makes it harder for it to rise. So we're just going to do plain. And then, of course, at the end, if you want to, you could drizzle some honey on them. There's lots of yummy ways to eat them. Mostly just plain is delicious. So there are your croissants.